Yo, what's up guys? The Insane Game Freak here to bring you Durarara Season 2, Part 3, Episode 3, I believe. Yes, Episode 3. So this episode, once again, was relatively simple, so I don't have to really go through too much explanation because there's really only 3 parts to it, and the first 2 parts are the most important. You got the Mikado and Izaya conversation. You have the Anri and Haruna and eventually Kujiri conversation. And then you have the very end with Chikage and Masaomi. So I guess we'll just break it down piece by piece. Honestly, the most important part is Anri and Haruna and Kujiri. But the Izaya conversation is interesting because essentially what it does is explain... See, Mikado's intentions up until this point have been kind of like, we get it, but we kind of don't get it. Like, that's kind of the biggest thing with Mikado. I think this conversation does a decent job of explaining in more detail what Mikado's trying to do. Because he's already kind of expressively said that he wants to break down the dollars and reset everything and start from scratch. But the boat analogy they use is probably the best example of what he really wants to be and what kind of person he wants to be from now on. He does want to break down the dollar situation. He wants to reset everything. And it's kind of funny because him and Masaomi essentially want to do the same thing. The difference is they want to, like, Masaomi wants to break down the dollars to save Mikado, and Mikado wants to break down the dollars and everything else to set everything back from scratch. But I don't think he's going to change back to how he was. I don't think Mikado has any interest in changing back to how he was. Mikado's whole thing, especially with the boat analogy, was... They said, does he want to be out at sea or does he want to be on the beach? And Mikado's like, neither. I want to be the boat on the shore that never really comes in. AKA, meaning he always wants to be in the middle. He never wants to be fully dark and fully light, which represents his personality. His personality is the same way. He refuses to be truly good anymore, but he will not become evil. Because everything he's been doing is still... In retrospective, he hasn't done anything inherently evil yet. Like, out of everything I've seen Mikado do this season, he hasn't done anything what I would consider like, oh my god, look how evil this son of a bitch is. He's just been kind of like, like he's done dickish things and mean things and things that seem somewhat out of character for him or the him we used to know. But as a whole, he hasn't really changed too much. But what he wants to be is a middleman. He wants to be an anti-hero. That's like the best way to describe it. Where he's not like an inherently good person, but he's not like nowhere near what people consider a bad person. And actually this episode also brought a lot more parallels between him and Anri too. Because as we noticed through Haruna and Anri's conversation, after I've given you guys the explanation about Takashi, so if you haven't seen last week's review, get that review to understand Haruna as a character in that situation, so this scene will make more sense. But it's like, pretty much, she still obsesses over Takashi. That's still a thing. But as a general situation, she seems not to have any ill will towards Anri anymore. And granted, I think that's partially just due to the fact that she stabbed Haruna with the Psycha blade, which gave her a taste of what true Psycha is like. And also gave her a taste of Anri's true feelings, even though Anri wasn't aware that was being thrown into the mix. And it gets into Anri's internal conflict. Anri's character has always been, since Season 1, is that the whole idea is that she was traumatized with the whole situation with Psycha and her mother and her father and the murder that took place that night. She ended up taking control of Psycha, but the way their relationship worked up until recently was that to keep Psycha in check, she locked away her emotions, which is one of the reasons why she calls herself a parasite, because she's feeding off the emotions of other people to get through. Psycha gets more power through emotions because Psycha wants to express love and cut everything. The only way you can really deal with the true power of Psycha is kind of shutting yourself off. It's one of the reasons, if you notice, Kujiri, who we find out also is a Psycha wielder, I don't know if she just has another one of the mother blades or it is the original blade. And Psycha, and the one that Anri has, although it was a mother blade, is like a branch of that mother blade. I'm not totally sure. But the whole thing is that that's one of the reasons why Kujiri and her are the same. They're dead face. because it's kind of the way you have to kind of live that way. You can't live with the Psycho Blade. You cannot be emotional because Psycho takes advantage of that. Psycho feeds off emotion, so the more emotion you feed her, the more powerful and more uncontrollable she gets. Which is why Anri was always so dead-faced. The problem came into effect when she was interacting with Mikado and Masaomi more often. Also, picture in the background. Tell me how you like him. I'm pulling some Elite 8 stuff. The problem came into effect when Masaomi and Mikado got into her life, and she started to become, I guess the best way to describe it is more human. She started expressing herself emotionally more often, and she started to change. This creates a problem internally with her and Saiga, the best example being last week's episode where she was mad. She was mad. And Saiga was taking advantage of that. That's why she was being flooded with all this shit about, cut him, we can kill him, we should kill him. You know, your mother knew how to handle me better. Which is just a reference to your mother knew how to let go. You just say fuck it and throw it with the wind. Because Saiga wants to cut people. That's the way she expresses her love. And the conflict with Anri right now is that she cares about Mikado and Masaomi. That much is clear. Probably Mikado more in some ways more than Masaomi for obvious reasons that I'm not going to get into because it should be fucking obvious if you're watching this far into the series at this point. But her issue is, for one, she didn't want to get them involved with her because of her Saiga issues, and she was afraid that one day she might get too emotionally connected and Saiga would wind up doing some reckless shit, aka hurting the people she cares most about. Unfortunately, those feelings got out when she slashed Haruna, so Haruna is not, even though isn't inherently aware of everything, she knows enough due to the emotions flooding into her through her and Anri's last scuffle. And what this all boils down to is that Haruna and Kujiri both want Anri Saika because Anri Saika is Haruna's mother blade, and then on top of which, Anri Saika is a mother blade that Kujiri wants, and it kind of, I will say this episode did clear a few things up. It also explains Kujiri's whole thing in the opening. Kujiri doesn't seem to have any ill intentions and doesn't really seem to be going out of her mind with this type of shit. She's like, well, my employer has an obsession with supernatural things, so instead of giving the guy hers, she would rather give her Anri's because she wants to keep hers, which ironically enough, we even hear in this episode when Haruna asks, well, let me take that Saika off your hands and I'll handle it from now on. And Anri's like, no, I want to keep Saika. Which kind of brings up the question, does she want to keep, I've always been curious, what is Anri's reason for keeping Saika? Up until recently, I would say her reason was that she just didn't want anyone else to get hurt by it. Like, it was out of a sense of justice. That's what I used to think it was. Now I'm curious if it's still that or if it's something different. Because I think that's what it is. I think she still wants to have it as a way of protecting the things she cares about. I still think she's keeping Saika as like a sacrificial lamb situation. That's the way it feels. But I said her and Mikado were pretty similar because her and Mikado are both going through the same identity crisis issue. She doesn't know what she's struggling with Saika because she's becoming more flooded with human emotions, which was her reason for getting away from Mikado and Masaomi in the first place. But it's obvious that she wants to help Mikado and Masaomi, but she doesn't, she's stuck in the middle, which is one of the reasons why during her little clashes with Haruna, she asks her questions that she used to know the answers to. For example, do you think of me as a human or a monster? And she goes, you're a parasite. You told me that when you cut me a while back. And she's like, oh, that's right. Sorry about that. I'm suffering through a lot of, I don't know who I am and what I want to be. And Mikado's a little bit further on in his quest. I think he knows what he wants to be and who he is. It's just, he's in the process of transitioning. And then the last section, which really isn't that important because the last section is obviously a cliffhanger. Chikage finds Masaomi in the Yellow Scars chilling, and he comes up and he's like, so I got a question for you guys. And he goes like, what's the question? I need you to choose. Do you want to have your gang destroyed, or do you want to be under me as underlings? And I was like, you can already see from the previews, we're gonna get some Shizuo breakout, some Anri, Kujiri, Haruna talk at the cafe, some more Saika stuff, and Masaomi versus Chikage. Ooh, and Masaomi ain't a pushover. That man can throw some hands. Now, I don't think he's inherently. I don't know, because Chikage could kind of roll with Kodaka, so I don't know. Also, we get this whole thing. There's just like this little subplot with the dude who used to own that drug thing, that drug gang that it works obviously under the Yotogiri family. The guy kind of walks in and is like, "Oh yeah, I was in the passenger seat with a guy who actually hit Kodaka." And the guy looks familiar, even though he's wearing the glasses and shades. So I'm not specifically sure who he is, and I feel like I should. But so if anyone has any thoughts and theories on who that is in the mask talking and who was the guy, because I feel like once you figure out who this guy is, it'll make it easier to figure out who hit Kodaka. Because that shit's still up in the air. And then, oh yeah, side note, Izai finds out that old salty bitch fucking old salty bitch threw Salty's head out in the middle of the street and shit. Also, side note, we finally get to see some emotion from Seiji, which actually should make an interesting dynamic. It's already been kind of implied that Seiji's been changing a little bit with being with Mika so much. So and that's one of the reasons why Namine kept trying to get the head away from Seiji and using Mika as a scapegoat. So the question now becomes, now that he knows where the head is, and now he knows that the head is still around, he has the means to get to the head, is he gonna dump Mika and... Because I don't think Seiji also doesn't know that the head belongs to Salty. Which was interesting, because back in the first episode, when they were talking about her head, they didn't bring up that Seiji... Like, they're not bringing... Like, Seiji... I was surprised Seiji had no reaction about, well, the head belongs to Salty, so you're going to try to get with Salty, which won't fucking work, because Shinra won't have any of that shit. But, you know... Those are just my thoughts. So please leave your comments in the comment section below. Send me your thoughts and views and theories and all that other fun jazz. This has been the Insane Game Freak. That's a game, play to win, and I will catch you guys later.